So in this returns under GST, what you need to know is about the various returns, and with respect to each return, we need to know what is the frequency, that is when it should be filed, who is required to file, all those things. So see this GSTR 1, details of outward supplies. So this GSTR 1 is to be filed by every person with respect to the outward supply details, and the frequency will be on a monthly basis. If aggregate turnover during the previous year does not exceed 1.5 crores, then the frequency will be on a quarterly basis. Okay. So what is the date? Previously it was 10th. Now you should remember it as 11th. So previously it was 10th of the next month, but now it has been made as 11th of the next month. So you need to remember the date as 11th. If the aggregate turnover does not exceed 1.5 crores, then quarterly, that quarterly date will be notified from time to time. This is with respect to GSTR 1. In GSTR 1, whether we need to give invoice-wise information or consolidated information, invoice-wise information and not consolidated. Whereas GSTR 3B is a consolidated return, it's like a summary return, and GSTR 3B contains the details of outward supplies, inward supplies, gross GST payable, input tax credit, all the details will be there, but on a total basis, not invoice-wise, and it is to be filed by 20th of the month following every month, and now it is staggered. So staggered in the sense like in some cases, like if the turnover exceeds 5 crores, then it will be 20th, otherwise it will be 22nd and 24th, like that we have on a staggered basis. So that staggered basis we need to file GSTR 3B. So therefore literally it is not 20th always. Literally it is not 20th always. Previously it was 20th of the month following every month. So now it is staggered from Jan 2020 onwards. And CMP 08 is a statement cum challan to make payment by a person who is opting for composition scheme. A person who is opting for composition scheme need to file CMP4 by 18th of the month following every quarter. That's actually not called as a return, that's called as a statement. Okay. So it is like along with that, tax will also be paid just like our GSTR 3B. Then quarterly basis we need to file that. Then GSTR 4 is an annual return to be filed by a person opting for composition scheme by 30th April of the succeeding financial year. Whereas GSTR 5 is a return which is to be filed by non-resident taxable person. NRTP who got temporary registration needs to file GSTR 5 by 20th of the month following every month, or 7 days from the expiry of registration, whichever is earlier. So therefore, this return for a NRTP is 20th of the next month usually, or 7 days from expiry of registration, 7 days from expiry of registration, whichever is earlier will be the due date. Okay. Then GSTR 6 is to be filed by a person who is distributing the credit, that is ISD. So whatever the credit that is distributed to be filed by 13th of the month following every month. GSTR 7 and GSTR 8. GSTR 7 is TDS and GSTR 8 is TCS. And that return should be paid like that, the TDS and the TCS should be paid along with return, and the return should be filed by 10th of the month following every month. GSTR 9 is an annual return. It is to be filed by 31st December of the succeeding financial year, whereas 9A is not there. Previously 9A was composition scheme, but now that is replaced with GSTR 4. 9B is e-commerce operator annual return, same deadline. And 9B, that is 9B. 9C is report, audit report. Those who are required to submit the audit report are required to submit 9C, same time 31st December of the succeeding financial year. Whereas there is something called as final return, GSTR 10. After cancellation of registration, so whenever you go for cancellation from the date within 3 months or order of cancellation, whichever is later. So that is, you select one date with effect from which there will be cancellation. You select one date with effect from which there will be cancellation. Okay, one date, one particular date. From that date 3 months or order of cancellation, whichever is later. Sir, which is later, sir? Usually it depends. Say today you make an application for cancellation of registration. You selected say April 25th as the date of cancellation. So from April 25th, 3 months. So May 25th, June 25th, July 25th. Up to that, or order of cancellation. Whenever the order is passed, whichever is later should be taken. That is about GSTR 10 final return. GSTR 11. GSTR 11 is like details of inward supplies to be furnished by a person having unique identification number. A person who is having a UIN, so needs to file GSTR 11 at the time of filing refund claim. Okay, so this is like I told you already, this consulate, embassy, foreign diplomatic missions, etc. Their outward supply is exempted. On their inward supply, whatever GST paid, they will get as a refund. So along with refund claim, they should go for this GSTR 11 also. So details of their purchases, okay, at the time of filing refund claim. These are the various returns that we have, okay. Then, persons who are not required to file GSTR 1 or 3B. Who are not required to file 1 or 3B? Those who are required to file other returns. ISD is required to file GSTR 6. So they are not required to file 1 or 3B. NRTP is required to file GSTR 5. So they are not required to file 1 or 3B. Composition taxpayer will be filing CMP 8. So they are not required to file 1 or 3B. TDS, TCS deductor, they will be filing GSTR 7, GSTR 8. So not required to file 1 or 3B. Same way OIDR supplier will be filing GSTR 5A. 5A, that is by 20th of the month following every month. OIDR supplier will be filing GSTR 5A by 20th of the month, following every month. By 20th of the month following every month, that OIDR supplier is required to file a return. So GSTR 5A. Then annual return is not required to be filed. How to remember? Remember with a keyword tonic. T for TDS deductor. O for OIDR supplier located outside India making supply to non-taxable recipient, non-taxable online recipient. N for NRTP, non-resident taxable person. Then I for input service distributor, C for casual taxable person. These people are not required to file annual return. Annual return is not required to be filed. Then late fee for delay in filing return. So what is that late fee, sir? Depends, sir. If it is annual return, 100 rupees per day, subject to maximum of 0.25% of turnover in a state or union territory. Whereas all other returns other than annual return, 100 rupees per day subject to a maximum of 5,000 rupees. So that will be taken as the late fee. Clear? So type of returns, all returns other than annual return, 100 rupees per day subject to a maximum of 5,000. If it is annual return, 100 rupees per day subject to a maximum of 0.25% of the turnover in a state or union territory. So this is the late fee here. Then, now whatever late fee that we discussed is that given in this study material, but applicable rate fee is different. 10 rupees, 25 rupees like that and all we have late fee, but that you don't have to remember for exam. And this late fee whatever we discussed is under CGST Act. The same late fee is payable under SGST Act also, but not under IGST Act. Then, now this is the latest amendment here, May 21 amendment, that is, you can file the returns, nil returns through SMS now. What are those nil returns? GSTR 1, GSTR 3B and CMP 8. If all the entries in the return are nil. For example, few entries, there are some numbers, but tax payable is nil. In that case, it will cannot be filed through SMS. So when it can be filed through SMS, all entries in the return is nil. Then you can file the return. Returns can be filed through SMS. Understood? Then rectification of returns. What is this rectification of returns? There is no concept of revision in returns in GST. So you filed a return and you need to rectify that return. So in the subsequent month return, for example, Jan month return you want to rectify. In February month or March month when you file return, in that returns, you can rectify the data pertaining to Jan. Okay, there are some amendment tables. In that amendment tables, we can do the rectification. But what is the maximum time? With respect to financial year, any returns that is filed, the maximum time to amend it is by due date of September return or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. Somewhere already we have come across this. In credit note, we have come across 30th September of the succeeding financial year or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. And input tax credit time limit also we have come across, that is 20th October of the succeeding financial year or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. Now this is the rectification, that is due date of September return of the next financial year, depend upon the return, or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier, will be taken as the deadline by which return should be rectified. Okay, this is the maximum time limit. Then see, generally we need to report outward supplies in GSTR1, correct? Outward supplies will be reported in GSTR1, I told you, on a invoice wise basis. But there are some exceptions to this. What is that? B2B supplies always invoice wise, don't see anything further. If it is a B2B, what is a B2B? Recipient is registered is known as B2B, always it should be invoice wise. Whereas B2C supply, if it is interstate supply, if the value of invoice exceeds 2,50,000, so B2B always invoice wise, no doubt about it. Now B2C means what? Recipient is unregistered. Sir, how supplier will know whether recipient is registered or unregistered? Supplier will, if supplier gets the information about the recipient, then recipient is registered. If supplier don't have any information, then it is deemed to be unregistered. So if it is B2C and it is interstate supplies, if the value of invoice exceed 2,50,000, so we need to report it invoice wise. If the value of invoice does not exceed 2,50,000, then state wise consolidation needs to be done, because we need to distribute the IGST revenue to that state now. So state wise consolidation is required. What if it is B2C intra-state, within the state? In that case, you don't have to do any reporting separately. So entirely you can consolidate and you can put. One of the biggest reason why, 2A will not be matched with GSTR, 2A will not be matched with 3B is that in GSTR1, what suppliers will do, B2B suppliers and all, they will put under B2C. Because of that reason, it will never be coming in 2A, and because of which the recipient cannot take the credit, 2A or 2B. So that is one of the biggest problem that is there, which is done by the suppliers who are filing GSTR1. Because B2B invoice wise, they need to enter the data, so they will try to skip that and put it consolidated, because of which the recipients will not be able to take the credit.